Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Aubrey Reeves, CEO of Business and Arts. Before we begin, I'd first like to take a moment to acknowledge that I'm a settler speaking to you from Toronto, with the honor to be a guest on the traditional lands and waters of the Petun and Wendat peoples, the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee Confederacies, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit River, as well as many other Indigenous nations, some of whose names are no longer remembered. By saying the names of its original keepers, we remember that this territory continues to be the subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Three Fires Confederacy of the Anishinaabe to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We acknowledge all who came before us and have traveled the land and waters of this territory. And we're grateful to have the opportunity to work, to live, and to meet on these lands. Today's session will include the latest insights from the Arts Response Tracking Survey, also known as ARTS. This partnership project between Business and Arts, the National Arts Centre, and Nanos Research began in May of 2020. Through quarterly surveys of over 1,000 Canadian culture goers, our aim has been to provide the arts sector with insights into Canadians' shifting attitudes towards participating in indoor and outdoor arts and cultural events. Thank you to the NAC and Nanos Research for their continued collaboration. And I'd also like to thank Irfan Raji, David Bennett, and our newest partner, Camdo, for their support of arts. And a big thank you to the Speaker Series presenting partner, Power Corporation of Canada. The full arts report is now available in both English and French on our website. This edition of the survey was in the field at the end of April. We're happy to have ASL interpretation for today's session. As well, auto-generated English and French captions can be turned on in your control panel. Only the presenters and moderators will have our microphones on today, so please submit your questions in the Q&A box and vote for the ones you think are most relevant. The session is scheduled for 1 hour and 15 minutes to give us ample time for questions. We will now start today's session with a presentation of the research findings by Nik Nanos. As the Chief Data Scientist at Nanos Research, Nik has led thousands of research projects in Canada and around the world, ranging from market studies, customer satisfaction tracking, creative testing, program development, and reputation management. Nik has worked alongside many arts and culture organizations, including the Ontario Arts Council, BC Arts, Ontario Culture Days, and a variety of museum and art galleries. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Nik.
Thanks a lot, Aubrey. I'm going to share my screen with the latest tracking data. And it's great to virtually join everyone today. So we're going to do a walk through the latest wave. It includes tracking, but in this particular case, the special issue or topic that we wanted to focus on had to do with loyalty and different manifestations of loyalty and engagement. And as you can see from the headline for you news savvy folks, you can see, not a big surprise, that content is important in terms of the relationship. But what influences attendance or frequency of attendance, a lot of that has to do with personal or cultural connections. So let's unpack things a little bit. As Aubrey mentioned, the survey was completed, was done at the end of April, and it's a national survey. We focused on the importance of arts and culture organizations, past and future engagement, ticket purchasing, and things that influence attendance. So, you can see here, there's a bit of a generational variation on the things that are likely to influence which arts and culture events or exhibits people attend. And you can see the light blue are younger individuals, medium blue are 35 to 54-year-olds, middle-aged people, and the dark blue is 55 plus. And one thing that I'd like to point out is you can see here, and I think this is quite interesting, that younger people are more likely to identify convenience as a key driver of attending an event or exhibit. And people that are over 35 years of age are more likely to kind of report that feeling a personal or cultural connection to an event or exhibit is more likely to drive views. There's no real generational difference when it comes to learning or the rewards or price or social connections. But you can see significant difference for young people needing convenience. It probably speaks to them needing to juggle a lot of things in their personal lives. And, when it comes to drivers of the relationship, you can see on the right-hand side, when individuals were presented with a list of different potential factors, content far in a significant way is more likely to be identified as the item that's more likely to influence the relationship with an arts and culture organization. The other thing that's critical, we also had discounts on the list. And if you look across the bottom, didn't matter whether you were someone who reported a low, high level of importance when it comes to arts and culture organizations. The reality is that discounts were not really cited as being important. One thing that we look to unpack in this particular wave is we wanted to look at what people reported doing or engaging in the past year and what they expected in the next year. And, you can see here that it looks like people are expecting to participate in more free events or exhibits. Also, they're more likely to report this year that you report expected behavior in terms of single ticket purchases. You can see emails at the bottom of the emails at the bottom of the list. However, what's really cool, let's go to the next slide. When we think of I'll call it the intensity of engagement and importance that people assign to arts and culture, what you can see here, at least quite interestingly, that for example, we saw emails at the bottom of the list when we looked at the total sample, but there's a significant variation. For those individuals had the highest level of intensive importance attached to arts and culture activities, they're much more into receiving emails and e-newsletters from arts and culture organizations. And also you can see quite strong scores for those high intensity individuals, not only for purchasing single tickets, but also attending free events or exhibits. And, not a big surprise along a lot of those other dimensions that they're more likely to be engaged. Speaks to the high level of engagement for those individuals that score the importance of arts and culture a 7, 8, 9, or 10 out of 10. So the good news is that in general, your most engaged individuals love those emails, right? 46%. And those e-newsletters, while for those individuals that are not have as high a level of importance, and they're still culture goers because they go to arts and culture activities and engage in those activities, just a little lower. We also did a bit of a segmentation based on different types of individuals, and these are the purchasing personas that we have. And for those individuals that are buying tickets throughout the year, and for many events, you can see they're clearly focused on content. Same thing goes for those that, go to things if someone else invites them. Content is quite important. However, for those Bedrock subscribers, people that purchase yearly tickets, it's not just content, it's the personal connection that they have with a particular exhibit, and that has a significant influence. For those people that are kind of like the blockbuster group, I don't know if we're allowed to say that. I know that's blockbuster with a lowercase b, not a capital B. You can see that they're actually, in addition to kind of being focused on blockbusters, they're more likely to say that convenience is what influences their attendance. And, for those that are rare ticket attendees, you can see that they haven't been attending very much, but there is a certain level of interest. About 4 out of every 10 report being interested in being more engaged in the coming year. And for those individuals that are free, convenience and things they can learn are the things that they're looking for. For the discount hunters, you can see that the content being offered and the role that they play in the life and community are the top 2 things that are important to them. So we have to think of the diversity of individuals within what I'll say the arts and culture family writ large, and how they have different views, different perspectives, and different things that they're interested in. Now, like in all surveys, we get results we may like or we may not like. I thought this was quite interesting. you know, in the research that we did, we asked all the culture goers to score the level of importance of different types of organizations, including arts and cultural organizations, on a scale out of 10. You can see here that 48% scored or selected arts and culture organizations as important. The overall score out of 10 was a 6.5. You can see when we look at the total arts and culture organization, arts and culture sample, that arts and culture did better than retail and sports teams and faith groups, but did not do as well, for example, as other types of some commercial organizations, media organizations, and nonprofit. However, and this is the really important thing, that when we look at those high intensity arts and culture individuals that assign a high level of importance, they are more likely to identify nonprofit charities. And, you know, when we were having the debrief, the first debrief on the survey, a lot of this correlates with income. These are higher income individuals who are highly engaged and love arts and culture, and also are more likely to put a level of importance on the nonprofit. And it speaks to the kind of community mindedness that they have. When we get to the less intensive arts and culture individuals, those that score a little lower, you can see that you know, they're more likely to identify other types of organizations that are important to them. So maybe the key takeaway when we're looking at the cross-pollination between all these different types of organizations is that the more engaged individuals are, probably the more community-minded and charitably minded that they are when it comes to arts and culture organizations. Unpacking where things are going, we can see that, you know, for indoor events and outdoor events, when we ask about expected frequency of attendance in the next 12 months for culture goers, that there's some downward pressure. No real change for museum and galleries. And this is probably where we're expecting things to go. So a lower level of intensity where we've had fewer people saying every 2 to 3 months, or at least once a month, and more individuals saying once every 6 months or less. So that's one of the key takeaways in terms of what we might expect in the coming year. So with that, Aubrey, I'm going to wrap it up. The good news is, as Aubrey said, I don't want to use the word lurking because I will be more active than a lurker, but I will be in the chat. I'm happy to answer any questions related to the survey and also take any ideas for future surveys. And I'm looking forward to being in the chat and listening to the panel. So over to you, Aubrey. See ya.
Thank you, Nick. Yes, thank you for that summary of research. Again, the full reports are available now on our website, and the link has been put in the chat. It's available in both English and French. I'm now happy to welcome our panelists. We have 3 panelists with us today. The first, Andy Verboom, is the Program Manager of Membership Services at the Writers' Federation of Nova Scotia, whose annual membership grew from 500 to nearly 750 during the COVID-19 pandemic. He joined the organization in 2019 to shepherd its extensive brand and website redesign process. And now Andy is staff lead for digital development, design of policies, programs, writers' residencies, workshops, special projects, and events. So welcome to you, Andy. Next up, we have Julie Mulligan, who is the Senior Digital Marketing Manager with the Ottawa Art Gallery, specializing in digital strategy, branding, content marketing, visual storytelling, and campaign development. Most recently, Julie led the COVID-19 recovery strategy for a tourism destination, where campaigns received national and provincial recognition, including winning an Ontario Tourism Resiliency Award. Julie leads OAG's marketing strategy, impacting visitor numbers and revenue generating units, all while raising the profile of the gallery in the Ottawa-Gatineau region. And third, we have Christine Harris. Christine moves people with emotive storytelling, bold vision, and impactful experience design. Christine is the VP of Marketing and Communications at Luminato Festival Toronto, which kicks off in just 2 weeks. Previously, she was the Innovation Manager at the Canadian Cancer Society, Branding and PR Manager at TVO, and Marketing Manager at YMCA Canada. She was founding board chair at North York Arts and served as board vice chair at Scarborough Arts. So welcome to all three of you. I'm looking forward to getting into our discussion. So to get us started, I'd like to ask each of you what loyalty looks like within your organizations. How do you define and measure it? And let's maybe start with Julie.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here today. So when starting these questions, I found this first one very interesting, even though I know that the webinar here today is audience engagement and loyalty, because I find that loyalty can come in all different levels and forms. So with this, I really had to dig deep in terms of what loyalty means for the gallery as a cultural space. Especially one that offers free admission. So at the OEG, we really strive to create a culture specifically around community. So instead of a person saying, like, a person would be loyal to us if there's some kind of a transaction, which is very linear and structural, we want to kind of flip it and say, how can we be loyal to the communities that we serve? And how do we work together to kind of create this culture? So this is something that we've kind of taken and honed in on, taking it from very transactional and flip it to relational. So we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the communities that we serve, and the communities that we work with really align with the values that we have as an organization. So in terms of how do we measure this loyalty? And I feel like it's a loyalty that's a sign of reciprocal respect with the communities that we work with. We can view it as the testament of the types of partnerships that we're growing. We're really moving into a co-production role with communities in our exhibitions. And I feel like just the long-term partnerships that we're building with the gallery right now is really big measurement of the loyalty that we're seeing.
Great. Let's go to Andy. Yeah, in your bio, I mentioned that you've really grown your membership. So what does loyalty look like at the Writers Federation?
Yeah, I should say that growth was a pleasant surprise and unexpected, and we are still trying to deliver on the new capacity, the new kind of constituency we have to serve. So because the Writers Fed is largely a member-based arts service organization, we can see loyalty in two metrics. One is annual membership renewals. Our memberships expire December 31st each year, so the sooner we reach a certain bump in membership in the next year, the better we're doing. And also, of course, public event attendance, because we are a presenting arts organization as well. What we can't consider within loyalty is probably about 90% of our programming, workshops, residencies, mentorships, awards, that type of thing, which serve different writers at like different points in their career, as well as different points in their cyclical process of creating literature. So most of the programs are applicable to an individual writer only for a segment of their time being a member with us. So our concern is mostly on measuring the health of individual programs through application numbers, submission numbers, registration numbers, et cetera. That influences how we see loyalty. And so loyalty isn't really a goal that we can strive toward. It's a symptom of how well our programs are serving our constituency, essentially. If membership renewals are slow, we try to think about who we're underserving. And if public attendance disappoints for a particular event, we essentially refine or completely redesign the event for the next iteration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's really very much about program evaluation then for you.
Entirely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Christine, you have one festival a year. So how do you gauge your loyalty and measure and define it?
Thanks for saying that. That's exactly what I was going to start with. We have one festival a year, so the context at Luminato is a little bit different. And I'm fairly new. I've been at the festival for just over a year. So there's a lot of learning that I'm doing right now. I love what Julie spoke about in terms of like the relational focus as opposed to transactional. And that's some of the work that we're looking at right now, particularly around experience. And I think Andy's talking a little bit about like, what does the experience look like for people? And so, and then we look at different pockets. So when we look at our volunteer program, there are folks that come and come again and come back and are huge ambassadors. And there's a very strong repeat volunteer audience that we have that are like really great for the organization and get people excited about it. We've got a fairly new membership program in the last couple of years, and it's not a broad program, but those folks, even though it's a small number, they're highly engaged and want to come out to a lot of different events and opportunities to engage with us at the festival. And so we do look at, what is working really well over here with our volunteers. What can we learn and apply those to our members? And similarly speaking, we do have transient audiences. So Nik talked a little bit about the fact that people are content or offering driven. And so we find that a lot, especially because we only happen once a year. People come in for the thing that is of interest to them. And so we spend a lot of time building relationships with communities and trying to sustain those relationships year over year. So it's not just, we did this one thing and we don't want to talk to you anymore. So I would say those are the few things that we're looking at with respect to loyalty. But at the end of the day, I think it starts with us as an organization. What is our offering? What experience are we offering? So that people want to continue to engage with us and build strong relationships.
Mm-hmm. That's a very challenging prospect to try and engage those one-off audiences a whole year later. Through the Arts Response Tracking Survey, we continue to see low membership and subscription numbers overall, and this is backed up by a lot of anecdotal stories I'm hearing across the sector about a downward trend in membership and subscription. In your experiences, how does membership relate to engagement? And does being a member necessarily correlate with high engagement, or are there other factors really at play? And Julie, your gallery has a membership, so we'll start with you again.
Yes, and I would have to agree with this, that membership does relate to high engagement, but there's also other factors at play. So with us, as mentioned, we're a free institution, so we go back to this around our membership model as well. And then what does it mean to be free? And so for us, it's not specifically offering just something for free to get people through the doors, but it's about removing barriers to access in the arts and culture industries. So this could be various. So it could be an economic barrier. We offer things like free childcare at events. We offer multi-user washrooms. So we very much want to have an accessible gallery free of barriers. So considering this, why would someone want to buy a membership when it's free access? So we really reviewed our membership model, and we really had to pivot in terms of what do people really want from this membership model. And I like what Christine said in terms of it's not a one-off membership model. We redesigned it to be really targeted into people's wants and needs, potentially in different communities, because ultimately a membership base is creating its own community. So we have one targeted to audience or artists, and one targeted to corporate, and one targeted to social. And it very much is a sign, I think, of high engagement with a free gallery when people then buy a membership. So they spend their very valuable funds to support a gallery, and that they know that they're contributing to something more in that side of engagement. So it could be contributing to our exhibitions. It can be contribute to our sustainability as an organization or programming, or also just to help feel a part of that community around the gallery. We also find that it's also a very affordable way to donate. If people can't make big donations, they can also become a member, and they know that they're supporting something good for the gallery. With the membership also, which was really fun, is we created more events around it. So there's member brunches, there's social hours, there's member shopping days, behind the scenes tours. So it's adding that added value to membership that people really, really value.
Andy, I feel like you already kind of addressed this, but if there was anything else you wanted to expand on.
Yeah, it's interesting. We offer a standard membership dues rate, a discounted rate, which is less than 50% of the cost, and then frequently, like peppered across our website, are invitations for people to contact us if a discounted rate is still a barrier. And I don't really see any strong distinction. I do not have data to back this up. Any strong distinction between those, between the engagement levels of those who are paying full price versus half price versus free. I mean, if anything, those who are asking for free membership are probably going to be a little more engaged because they have to do that extra step of asking a person to give them a dues waiver, essentially. But I did want to add that loyalty, and this is probably going to contradict my first answer. If the Writers Fed does consider loyalty as an end in itself, it's in how that looks in terms of annual donations. We have a board mandate to generate about 15 grand a year in direct public micro donations and member donations. And the vast majority of these come from longtime members who may or may not still be actively engaged at the stage they are in their career. So we do have kind of maybe sleeper members who essentially will renew. Often that comes in the same transaction as a top-up donation. And they're not really engaged in our programming, but because the donation and the renewal are coming in at the same time, and based on very explicit feedback we've received, they're supporting our organization because their loyalty is to the community of newer writers that we're serving more actively, those writers who have less means and are benefiting more from our organization.
So they're very clearly giving back.
Yes, exactly. So I'd say membership correlates with loyalty, but in our circumstance, membership doesn't correlate with engagement, really, at all.
Okay. And Christine, how does Luminato try to balance innovation with offerings that resonate with those returning attendees, those people that you're trying to get back after a whole year?
That's a pretty big question. And there are a few things that we are looking at doing right now. And one of them is really focusing on audience experience. And so bringing in some design principles and audience centricity, which is a little bit of a shift in our way of thinking and our traditional approach. And so we are having conversations right now about how do we better understand these audiences, some of them who only come through once a year, and how we can better understand what is important to them so that they're going to spend their time. Because what we offer are art experiences, and that requires time. Some of them are paid, some of them are free, but at the end of the day, it's about time. And so what are the things that are of interest? And Julie said this right off the top about barriers to engagement. And so we really want to talk to our audiences or our potential audiences, the people we would like to be our audiences, or who are our sometimes audiences who are very much focused on programming specific, like they're like, we want to come to see this programming, and we want them to say, we're going to come every year, and we know we're going to find some programming that's going to be of interest to us. So we really want to talk to them, do all kinds of research, and it can be fun research. I'm sure Nik loves research, as do we, and we try to make it fun in terms of how do we have those conversations, how do we have that engagement as well, and then how do we make decisions based on what we are hearing directly from audiences, and so that they can see themselves and they can see their preferences and their needs and their desires for whatever that is, easy access, for convenience if they're younger people in their neighborhoods. And so there's a lot of innovation work and design work that we're looking at doing right now to really shift our perspectives and become very audience centric. And that will help facilitate some of the programming decisions that we're making. We are also really focusing on programmatic partners and community partners. And so over the last couple of years, we have had significant partnerships that have allowed us to deliver the experiences that we are delivering. And so some of those folks are, hey, we're partnered with, for example, Wavelength for one of our days at Luminato in the Square this year. And they have an audience that has a very specific experience that they expect that they'll be delivering with us. And so there's a cross-pollination and a partnership that happens so that folks are exposed to other kinds of experiences as well. So
In terms of that question of convenience, is it really all about just going to where the audiences are, going into their neighborhoods, or is there other ways that you can be convenient for those audiences that need that?
I think convenience is a broad term. And some of that is just even about finding out about us and how to engage and how do we make it really easy for people. And so we're even looking at our user experience on our website and what is the journey between when folks find out about Luminato and how they can customize what exactly they're looking for. So they come on our website and see, I'm interested in family friendly, and they can click on that category and see, and what dates are these at? And they can find what is for them and build their own experiences based on what their preferences are and where they want to spend their time and what they want to do. And so I would say convenience goes way beyond location, but really about removing, like Julie has said, removing those those barriers to access, whether they be physical, geographical, like communication and informational. It can go across the entire span. And how do we make things really easy for people to do what they want to do and find something that's just for them?
So continuing that, Julie, the Ottawa Art Gallery has a building centrally located in downtown Ottawa. So it's not as easy for you to go out and be in other regions, but Ottawa Art Gallery is really known for its strong community engagement. So can you share some of the successful initiatives that have really helped build those meaningful connections with your audiences?
Yeah, definitely. And I have to say, I also am somewhat new to the gallery. I've only been here about a year and a half, but I can honestly say from my first connection with speaking with somebody at the gallery, you can really get a sense from everyone who works here that the idea of being rooted within the communities that we work with is very, very strong. And that's part of the goals that everybody works towards, and almost seeing the gallery as more of not just a cultural institution, which it very much is, but as a community hub. So it goes beyond being an access point for arts and culture, but what does it mean to kind of stream into different communities, different avenues, like doing a lot of work with mental health, things like that. So in terms of an example, one that came up when thinking about this question was a work that we've done with the OBAC, which is the Ottawa Black Artists Collective. And this is very much a partnership that started with a conversation, and it's been growing into an ongoing relationship probably for about the past 4 years, offering primarily it was a mentorship opportunity for youth in the community. So we offered a curator mentorship opportunity where somebody could apply to the program, and then they can curate an exhibit within our gallery annex, which is our commercial gallery. And then that has kind of grown into these, allowing the communities to help us make meaningful connections within the community. And so how this kind of morphed into more of a meaningful connection with our audiences is how it grew into our recent 83 to Infinity exhibition, which is, it was an exhibition that focused on the 40-year history of hip hop in the Ottawa-Gatineau region. So not what you would typically see or think that would see at a visual arts institution, but it was really a really good testament and example of how communities came together to co-produce an exhibition. We were able to come to the table being fully honest, saying we don't know anything about hip hop, but allowing the community to take the lead in terms of their area of expertise, as well as our area of expertise in terms of designing and putting on exhibitions. So it really is a matter of an example of collaboration, as well as allowing the community to take the lead in that collaboration, is what I mentioned. It was really exciting to see because it really morphed and grew from the time the exhibition opened, which is usually a very exciting moment, through to the programming. It came with tons of programming in terms of workshops. We offered various hip hop workshops. We offered, there was graffiti murals that went outside of the gallery, music workshops, parties. And even after that, a lot of important conversations were had in terms of the role of community within the OAG specifically. And we could see what the importance of that with the audience, because even once the exhibition closed, we didn't want to use the term closed, because we thought that that was a signal that we're closing off the conversation and all those important conversations that were being had. And so we wanted to demonstrate with the communities that we worked on that we have this interest to continue to morph to the needs of the community, carry on these conversations even after an exhibition closes. And you mentioned, sorry, we can't go into other communities, but also what's really exciting for us is that we're trying to do that as well as bringing the art into more rural areas with our art tents. So we can go to things like festivals, more rural destinations to bring the art also to other people.
I got to see that show in November, and you could really feel the intensity of the community involvement in it. So bravo for that. Andy, as the Writers' Federation of Nova Scotia focuses on supporting writers and promoting local talent, what advice do you typically give to writers about building and engaging their audiences effectively?
I have a whiny dog underneath my desk right now, so he's going to play the role of the writers who we give this advice to, because it's usually not the advice they're looking for. Typically, when we're talking to newer writers about building their audience, or even like early career writers who put a book out but have not really engaged in building an audience yet, we focus on two things: social media, of course, and then also book tours. So bearing in mind that literary creation is extremely rarely compensated at all and never adequately compensated, this advice is kind of based on not considering return on investment. And it might sound a bit like altruism or like cruelty if the dog under my desk whines. So regarding social media, the advice is understand you're entering a conversation that pre-exists you and exists without you, and could even potentially be better off without you. Understand that you're really not special in this space and no one owes you their attention. So engage incredibly generously with others, promote others, provide value that your followers or those you interact with are not going to find elsewhere, and restrict self-promotion to like 10% of your activity, maybe 25% at the height of your book tour or something like that. On book tours, the advice is forget about sales entirely. That's not why you're doing this tour. So I don't know how applicable that will be to anyone listening. Genuinely connect with venue staff. That's an often overlooked aspect because they're not part of your audience, but they can recommend you. They can recall you to other visitors to their venue months, years after your event is done and you've gone. So if you make a good impression on them, you are spreading good word of mouth about you as an author or you as an organization. Genuinely connect with every attendee. If it's possible, thank every single one of them individually for coming. It's going to have that same sort of impact. The dog under my desk does not like that idea. You can also thank from the stage, but the important thing is that in this space, you are special and you are worthy of the event space, the venue space, because you're providing programming for the staff who's desperate for programming in that space. But still, you're no more special or worthy of attention than each of the attendees. So talk with them, find connections, make meaningful connections. And that is essentially an altruistic approach to building an audience. Hoping it comes in down the line. Incredibly hard to measure KPIs or ROI on that.
Yeah, and it also sounds like for many of your members, it's something done solo, really on their own, without a whole lot of support.
Yep.
So you have to also enjoy it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're worried about making back the money on your book tour, you're going to be miserable the entire time. You have to go into it spending the money and enjoying your trip, essentially.
Yeah, that is some tough love, but I think some good advice. Let's dig in a little bit more on the social media question and other digital tools. Digital engagement really is crucial, with almost half of the respondents saying that they receive emails or e-newsletters from arts and culture organizations. How do all of you use your digital platforms to build up that loyalty and engagement for your organizations? Does anybody want to jump in first on that? Christine?
Sure, I'll start things off. These are some of the things that we're doing right now because our festival is 2 weeks away as of yesterday. So we are very active now, as we always are year round on social and newsletters. And so one of the things that we're doing is we have our newsletters that go out, and actually they get high response. So Nick was talking about people who are already invested, who are super supportive of Luminato, and we have really high open rates, click rates right now, and we've had rolls of announcements. So we had our main festival programming, we had our free Luminato in the Square programming at David Pico Square, and so and not too long ago, we announced our new artistic director. And so we've had these waves over the last few months of just exciting news, things to check out, which has been one thing. We are also looking at folks who have bought tickets with us in the last couple of years and creating customized lists for them. Like, you came to this, you might like these things, as well as some of the other offerings. And so we definitely see high engagement when we say, you like this, you might like these things as well this year. And so kind of just translating based on what they've demonstrated their preferences are. I think also we've made some major redesign changes on our website. And so our web activity has ballooned over some of our previous years. And I think that speaks to the fact that it's really easy for people to find exactly what it is that they're looking for, because there's so much programming, but they can also customize it. As well on social, I think just giving people a preview of what the experience is going to be like. That is really key. Sometimes it's really challenging when new work is being created. And so we don't always have those moving images that kind of immerse people in the world, but we try really hard to create something that will give people the energy and the feel of the event. And then having conversations as much as we can. And so that is something we are just about to start rolling out, our conversation series. And so it's part of our programming, and it's connected to our programming with events where there are panels and artist talks, but also we're having conversations with people at the airport and people in the public about the issues that they care about, and tying that into, hey, come out and continue having these conversations with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Julie?
I love this question, being a marketer, because it's very lots of things can happen on different platforms, but it's specifically around the newsletter. What we find very exciting, and probably what kind of hints to what Nick's some of Nick's data was, that our newsletter, we see very, very strong engagement around our newsletter. It's probably one of our strongest communication tools. Right now, we consistently see an open rate of over 40%, which is a huge open rate for a newsletter. And pretty much anytime we have to launch a program, an exhibition, any kind of messaging around the gallery, usually our newsletter is our key driver of those conversions. So it's very encouraging to see, as we probably have a huge audience of very engaged advocates on our newsletter who are very invested in terms of hearing what's happening at the gallery. So the challenge we're looking at right now is, how do we flip that kind of high engagement levels on our newsletter to be a mechanism for revenue generation, as I'm sure all arts institutions wants to know about. In order to do that, I'm also very invested in integrating authentic storytelling into this strategy. I firmly believe that people very rarely want to have a hard sell, but more want to have that kind of content, which the data was referring to, hearing the authentic story and building the engagement through those stories, whether it's the work you're doing at your institution, the artists, the people behind it. There's so many different avenues that you can really put in there in terms of authentic storytelling. So one example that we recently did to test this with our newsletters, with our gallery annex, which is our commercial gallery. So we've integrated a regular feature about the artists and their stories who are featured either in the shop or the gallery annex. Tell a little bit about their background, their history, the reason why they do what they do, and then make that connection to, let's say, a link on our shop page, which features their collections, maybe have a specific artwork featured within the newsletter that drives more of that revenue generation and more of a drive to purpose based on increasing the awareness level. We try and do this on social media too. Obviously, social media channels are all about testing what messaging resonates on which channel and really having fun with that. But ultimately, I think in terms of really raising engagement, using those authentic stories and content to build engagement and the invested audience right now is key.
And Andy, you're leading digital development to the Federation. So what are your thoughts about this?
Luckily, I've had plenty of positions where I've had to deal with social media. Luckily, I can lead digital development and stay largely away from social media, which is a nice rest period for me. Honestly, our social media is really anemic. It's not great. We don't have the administrative capacity for like really proactive, well thought through social media strategy. Hopefully, knock on wood, we're hiring another staff member, a fourth staff member, part-time this summer, who we can just dump all of that onto. So our major digital outreach is through our newsletter. Julie, you will love this. Our weekly member newsletter has an open rate solid always between 75 and 85%, which is wonderful. Again, it's the sort of thing where we didn't do it on purpose. It happened, and now we just have to sustain it. So one contributing factor, or the major contributing factor, I think, to the high newsletter engagement is that about half of it is dedicated to aggregating member news and events and other literary events in the community that we have nothing to do with. That's a quarter of it. And then another quarter is aggregating opportunities for our members, whether it's publication or employment, or even volunteer opportunities. And then about half of the newsletter is our programming. Sometimes it's even lower than that. When things are a little quieter, it's a third or something like that. So if I had to speculate as to why we're doing so well, it's because people love seeing their own events in our newsletter.
Well, and opportunities for them. So, I mean, it's really clear what your newsletter is doing is building that sense of community and offering the support services to your membership. Yeah,
we have a 10-week member survey that is wrapping up tonight, and I cannot wait to get my hands on the final data. And a lot of the feedback on our newsletter is that folks want more opportunities in that section. So we're going to be beefing that up. But no one is really complaining about the part of the newsletter that is our content. So they're okay with us taking up half of the space, but they do want more opportunities. So yeah.
Yeah, well, it's about relevance, right? So it's clearly relevant. But good point about the amount of time and energy that's needed to manage social media. And when you're a smaller organization, it can really take over. Feeding that beast, the content beast, takes up so much energy and attention. And even for larger organizations like Luminato, you really have to have dedicated people on that all the time. So it is a challenge. So you have to focus on the right platforms for you and where your audiences are. And we've had a question from the audience about that. Is there any insight you have right now about the best platforms and what the kind of segmenting of messages that work on each of those are?
I can volunteer that we've totally given up X, formerly Twitter. It used to be that for literature, if you're writing fiction, put your effort into Facebook. If you're writing poetry, put your effort into Instagram. And if you're writing nonfiction, put your effort into X, formerly Twitter. Now, our small efforts are entirely focused on Instagram, with Facebook as a sort of reposting site. And even with a new staff member focused on social media, that is where we're going to be putting probably 75% of our social media energy.
I might offer, and I think sometimes people think Luminato is much bigger than we actually are. And so that there's a perception of the largeness. And we've just been starting to actually grow the marketing team to be like, hey, we need some more resources to do all of this great work that that we need done. But I agree, like, you know, Julie spoke about Andy's newsletter open rates are incredible. Ours are like in the last, I would say, several months since the beginning of this year, we've been having, and since we did some significant redesign of our newsletters to make them very visual, very visually appealing, and, you know, designing in blocks that are easily readable for folks. We've had between 40 and 70% depending on what it is. But significantly right now we're staying at the 60, 70. And then when we have tailored e-blasts, those rates go a little bit higher as well. So, you know, I think it depends on your organization and who your audiences are. We are across the board because we have so many different kinds of audiences that we have and are hoping to have. Right now, LinkedIn is actually very high performing for Luminato because our stakeholders, our board are really getting super engaged. Our staff are super engaged because they're really excited about sharing what the experiences are for this year's festival. So some people are like, LinkedIn and Instagram, because of the medium, because it's very visual, because we're a multi-arts festival. And so we just have a feast for the senses and the eyes with respect to what those experiences are. Those two channels are doing really well for us on social. And our website, again, since we made some significant changes in the last few months, we have so much engagement on our website. And so we're able to really look at data to kind of see how do we make incremental improvements to the experience so that we can, you know, get those conversions.
I would have to agree. We've seen a very large engagement on Instagram and LinkedIn. Those are probably our two strongest channels. In terms of messaging, I think it's very much a test in terms of what could work on each channel. So if perhaps a suggestion would be, if you have time and capacity to do so, even making a little persona list of what type of message would resonate on each of your channels, or what's the purpose, maybe a one sentence of what each channel is for. So like we said, Instagram is obviously very visual. People could go there for the visual content. Also, a challenge that we've had with social media channels is that we can't share news content anymore unless it's on LinkedIn or X. So we very much value sharing people's personal experiences, third-party content. So that's been a block for us. So really figuring that out. And we've also find that the sharing of that content, whether it comes from somebody else's voice, generally resonates better with people to hear those different voices on the channel. So we're trying to work around that as well, but agreed that Instagram and LinkedIn are definitely seems to be our fastest growing channels.
So I just wanted to remind the audience that we do have time for questions. I just had taken one from the audience. But so if you have one, please type it in the Q&A box. I have one final question that's actually quite similar to one that's come in, so I'm going to try and squish the two together. There was some interesting data in the report about free attendees. We always sort of think everybody likes free, so it wasn't really surprising that 2 out of 3 culture goers were interested in going to a free event this year. But what was perhaps a little surprising is that the interest level for purchasing a single ticket was actually slightly higher than for the free events. And additionally, when the data was broken down between those intensity profiles, as Nick called them, the percentages really remained steady across those profiles. So those people who placed a low importance on arts and culture were about equally likely to purchase a ticket as they were likely to attend a free event. And we often assume that offering free attendance is sort of a gateway into those purchase ticket experiences. But this data kind of contradicts that. All of your organizations offer free programming. So how do you approach those things strategically? And then our question from the audience is also, how do you really show that there's still value in those free programs, that the quality is just as good as something paid?
I would suggest if you've got the funds to run something for free, ticket it, charge 2 different rates, and offer it for free if someone sends you an email. That would be my approach.
Yeah.
It's working for our membership incredibly well. We don't have abuse of the discounted rate. We don't have that we can, that we can tell. We don't ask for financial information or life circumstances or any reason why someone asks for a dues waiver or even a registration fee waiver or an application fee waiver. If they ask for it, they get it. I think people want to feel like they have money to spend and they're choosing to spend it on something cultural or artistic. And so those people can. And if they see that there's a lower fee and there's something in them that wants to make a larger contribution, they'll pay the higher fee because they can. And for those folks who are facing financial barriers, they have 2 other options to approach. So there is definitely value being communicated. It's worth, $50. But if you want to attend and pay $25 or want to attend for free, you can.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with communicating that value proposition that people are offering, as we are our strategy is to offer free admission. And that's to give people that open space and to be exposed to art and culture. But then I feel like our flip then is considering this free model. How do we strategically offer paid services to avoid the idea of now that we're putting up barriers when we've worked all this time to take down barriers to access? So an example of this would be implementing with our Sketchy Thursday program. While it used to be free, we've now offered it as a pay-as-you-go model or pay what you can model. To help cover some programming costs while also still allowing that access. So this next step to like a donation structure has actually seen that probably increase in engagement, more invested with signing up and people attending because they do see the value in that. Another example would be our art auction, which is our annual fundraiser, which is a paid event. So it is a ticketed event. But if people, and we really communicate the value of what that ticket is going to. So it's not, you're just buying a ticket to this art party, you're buying a ticket to support the gallery, to support our programming, to support our vision. So people are bringing into that community. However, if people can't attend, we still communicate that there's all these various avenues to access also. So people can bid for artwork online, or they can view the exhibition in a virtual tour. So we're still providing various avenues for accessibility. And so we find that we're not then creating these silos saying, this is a free event, this is a paid event, but we're much providing means for access for people to ensure that the gallery remains sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Great. So we have a question about the partnerships that you were talking about, Julie, that they often start with a conversation. And this is great advice for organizations of all sizes. The person's asking, do you have any further advice on initiating or start how to get these conversations started?
Yeah, I mean, like networks, it's amazing just by talking to people. And I feel like just initiating the conversation and reaching out to people, it's surprising how many people are open to the conversation and talking. Then we might think. In terms of that, I know the curator specifically on that 83 to Infinity show had multiple brunches. Every time she said she was beating or building the community, it always started with a brunch. So making those personal connections, I think that people are what they're really looking for. Also ensuring that those connections aligning with the work that you're doing with the community and your values as well, and making those meaningful relationships. I don't know if that was helpful, but yeah, I think it's making that personal connection as a first step is really helpful.
And Christine, Luminato has tons of partnerships. How do you go about starting those conversations?
Yeah, and it's so funny because the work of partnerships belongs to all of us at the organization. So you will find our folks in development, our folks in marketing and communications, and our programming folks all having great partnership discussions. Luminato in the Square, our free program offering for this year, is completely delivered through partnership. And so we have curatorial partners for each day of the festival. So we're co-creating and co-curating. And then there are other natural partnerships that have been happening where we just go to other places and we try to get an understanding of who their audience is, what their goals are. And we find some mutually beneficial opportunities for both of us. So, we're building some really great partnerships with other cultural institutions, which is fabulous. And it's like, what are your goals? What are our goals? What if we did this and we test it out? And how do we keep on building on that year over year? And so it's really exciting to see that. Last year's festival was done in partnership with 130 community organizations, partners, and groups, approximately. And we're doing the same kind of thing again. And really, it's about being true to and authentic to who you are and what you're hoping to achieve and what kinds of experiences you want to deliver to audiences. Also finding out what those goals of our partners are as well, and really making sure, not the force feed and trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, but more what values do you have, what works for you, and how can we amplify that so that it's beneficial for you and for us and the communities that we're engaging. So that has been working for us.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't do what we do without partners. So I just want to say that, sometimes we seem, and I think that's partially why we seem bigger than what we are, is because we are actually doing things in partnership with other groups and organizations. And so the footprint looks much larger than it actually is.
Yeah, absolutely. You really couldn't do the festival without all those partners in place. And none of you, of course, are lawyers, but we've had a couple questions about castle rules, which, of course, is the anti-spam legislation. Specifically, Christine, you referenced before touching base with past ticket buyers with recommendations for future. And this person's asking about, well, am I allowed to reach out to them if they haven't actually signed up for a newsletter? So what advice would you give, and recognizing this isn't legal advice?
Right. I am not a lawyer, but we have a lot of castle conversations when we are looking to engage. And one of the things when people are buying tickets, we actually give them the option to opt in to our newsletter or our partner newsletter, depending on what we are presenting. So that's one piece in terms of gathering some information that you can connect with. I think the other thing that we look at as well, and so sometimes our lists have a lot of opt-outs. These people opted out. We cannot email them, and we will not email them. The other thing, though, is there is a business transaction, which is implied, implicit consent when people buy a ticket. And so when you do that and there's no opt-out out of communications, that gives you kind of the rein to connect with folks. And I also encourage people to look at when you're choosing opt-in or opt-out as well, in that ticket buying journey, for example, or in that conversion journey that you're looking for. And so what serves well. What are the opportunities for you and others who you are partnered with to also grow their email lists as well. And then people also, whenever they get a communication, they have the opportunity to unsubscribe should this not be of interest, and then you respect those.
And every new email you send out, there's always the unsubscribed option. So
Absolutely.
multiple options for them to opt out of that communication. Yeah. Julie or Andy, you have anything to add about Castle and the joys of anti-spam?
No, I mean, we have to follow Castle rules. I think we all respect that audience and make sure that we're following the rules. Because in the end, you don't want to be viewed negatively either in that process.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so just to wrap up, I want everybody to reflect on what methods you use to ask your audience about their engagement, and how do you interpret this feedback or implement it into your program. So Andy, you said you've got a membership survey just about to close. Let's start with you.
Yes. Well, we also have implemented post-program surveys for about half of our programming, including residencies, workshops, mentorship programs, that type of thing. Whenever we get critical feedback, constructively critical feedback, because we're on a small scale, we are able to talk about it as a full staff of 3, and treat it like bug squashing, essentially. So that on the next iteration, we either have a solution or a mitigation for that issue, or we're able to say this person came in with unrealistic expectations, and we're not going to adjust our program based on the fact that they misunderstood what they'd be getting involved in. That sounds so ominous. I didn't mean it that way. But with this member survey, it's going to be a little more comprehensive. We, despite being a 50-year-old organization, we're less than a decade into recovery after a near organization-ending deficit, and we're still sort of rebuilding. So we just did a whole bunch of policy writing. We're bringing new bylaw amendments to our membership at our AGM next month. And we haven't done a 5-year strategic plan for 15 or 20 years. So this membership survey, much more comprehensive, we're going to have to take a new approach to it. I don't really know. We don't have a plan going in. We're just going to look at the data and let them lead us to some outreach opportunities, and maybe reinventing some programs so they serve segments of our membership that we have underserved in the past.
It's an exciting moment, though, to have all that data.
It's so exciting, and I'm having so much fun making charts and graphs.
All right, so Julie, how are you interpreting feedback and implementing it into your programs?
Yeah, I also am a lover of analytics. I can't get enough of them. So in terms of audience engagement, we use, all your kind of digital platforms in terms of measuring what that audience engagement is, whether it is web analytics, social media analytics, customer reviews. And we also do have a visitor feedback form, which people can fill out after their visit to the gallery, and we review those with the team here and take that into assessment. We also have our gallery visitor numbers. A challenge that we see is because there's not that financial point of transaction. We have to look at different ways in terms of gathering visitor data. So that very much is around customer reviews, Google reviews, the online analytics, as well as a way to gauge audience engagement could very much be around media features. So with some of our platforms, let's say even a distribution of a newsletter, we often find that the media picks up on those stories also, and then gets in contact with us about a new program or something like that. Within our team, we analyze those analytics on a monthly basis. I find it very interesting or very useful for myself just to know how our message is resonating with an audience and how our programming is resonating with an audience. And sometimes you can surprise yourself in terms of what is found in terms of a piece of content that puts out that you wouldn't think would get a lot of opens or engagement around it. And it does, where something that you thought was going to be super successful and nobody reads it. So just having that constant review of your analytics, especially I think with social media, because it's such a test in terms of what actually resonates with an audience.
All right, final word to you, Christine. What do you got planned for capturing data at this year's festival?
Yeah, so, and then there's a couple of comments in the chat that I'm just seeing, and absolutely, we don't actually overdo our communications, but people are really excited about the festival in the months leading up to, and we use engagement, which continues to increase, as a, hey, they seem to be liking these communications, so we'll keep doing that. And also noting that, yeah, we use that 2 years as implicit. We don't go past that. And we actually use ticketing systems sometimes in partnership with other people. So we're not doing it. We're not talking about, I'm not talking about Eventbrite. But in terms of this festival, and always, we get feedback in a number of different ways. And we appreciate whatever form it comes in. Sometimes they come into people sending us emails and saying, hey, have you thought about promoting in this way? Like, folks are really engaged in the things that we're doing. And so we're like, this is a great idea. Thank you for that. Sometimes it comes through our surveys that we do at the festival, which we share with the entire team at the end of the festival, and kind of look at, like, what should we be doing differently? We sometimes have verbal conversations with our partners, and we're always trying to learn. And so I wouldn't say we ever have it right. And that, you know, improvement is a constant and consistent thing. And we have time to kind of circle back and say, hey, there are some significant changes that we need to make in some areas. And so we take that feedback seriously, and we take, if we say we're going to start working towards being really audience centered, that means we actually have to engage and hear and make changes based on the feedback that we get. And so there's a lot of consistent work happening year round for us to improve our offering and improve our experiences based on what we're hearing from folks.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. A big thank you to Christine Harris, Julie Mulligan, and Andy Verboom for being our panelists today, contributing your wonderful insights and responses to this research. And thank you to Nik Nanos for your continued insightful analysis of the data. It's been a really enriching conversation. And thank you to the National Arts Center and Nanos Research for continuing to partner with us on the Arts Response Tracking Survey. I'd also like to thank David Bennett and Irfan Raji, who are both continuing their support, and a thank you to Camdo for joining this project. Finally, a big thank you to Power Corporation of Canada, who are the presenting partners of the Business and Arts Speaker Series. If any of you missed it, last week we announced the 2024 recipients of the Business and Arts Awards. Please visit businessandarts.org/awards to learn about this year's laureates. If you want to learn more about any of Business and Arts programs and events, please head to our website, and you can sign up for our newsletter or follow us on social. We're very active on LinkedIn as well. So many thank yous, and have a wonderful day.